Tuples are a lot like lists, except for once you have made them, they cannot change. So I can start off by making a list by using square brackets. With tuples, the way that you make them, you use parentheses. And you can put whatever you want in them, except for it has to be the same type of information for the whole thing. So you cannot mix and match numbers and strings or different kinds of objects. They all have to be the same kind of thing that are contained within the tuple. And once you've made them, you cannot append to them. So, for example, if I were to print out this tuple, it looks a lot like the way a list does. But if I were trying to change, like append, x.append, we're going to find that I'm going to get an error. This is something I could definitely do if it was in a list. And I could simply change it to a list by putting these square parentheses instead of the round ones. And then it's totally fine. If I were to print out the list, I'm going to see it has been appended. But again, if I change it back to a tuple, it does not like it. It's an error. So I can actually access one element of the tuple at a time in the same way that I do with a list. So I can get the first element of the tuple, and just like lists, it starts with 0 as the first indice, or the indice at the very beginning. So getting element 1 is actually that value 2. But as soon as I try to change an element, so if I were to say element 1, I now want to be equal to, let's say, 10, and run my program, it's going to give me an error. If you remember, lists could do this. I could use these square brackets again and make this into a list, and that's no problem. But as soon as I put it into a tuple, it won't let me do it. So I can't append, I cannot change, and everything has to be the same kind of element. So why? Well, if you wanted to, you could reformat a tuple as a list by saying list. So I can take that tuple and convert it into a list by using this casting, this method, this list. I can take that list and change it back into a tuple. But then again, as soon as I make it back into a tuple, it has the same restrictions as it did before. I can't change an element, I can't add elements to it, and all the types of elements have to be the same type. I can't mix and match. So tuples sometimes are considered the immutable cousin of lists. So they're like lists, but they're more restrictive.